The climate crisis is driven by science-based technologies. Coal, oil, plastics and mass consumer infrastructure all have a deep scientific and technological heritage. The fact that science-derived technologies interfere with the global climate is a powerful indication that the planet is in serious trouble. It is more, however, than just the understanding of the intricacies of meteorology with the chemicals and gases that mankind has managed to release into the atmosphere. The climate crisis indicates a profound planet emergency. There is no behavior, ready-made solution, methodology or science available to save the planet from any crisis at all, the likes of which include war, genocide, pandemics, starvation, let alone the climate crisis. A profound awakening has taken place particularly after World War II of the immense failure of humans to hold themselves accountable for their inability to manage themselves on the planet and deliver a reasonable quality of life. The list of transgressions is quite long and growing. It includes World War I, World War II, the Holocaust, Stalin, Hitler and Mao, the era of the Korean, Vietnam and the Cold Wars, the crisis in the Middle East and now the climate crisis. In the first two-thirds of the 20th century, well over 86 million people died as a direct result of Western worldview incompetency. Our cherished academic disciplines have failed us, including almost all science, philosophy, theology, politics, economics, and the overriding worldview of the Enlightenment. The very validity of the basic assumptions and results derived from these disciplines are deeply questioned and now face the chaos of 21st century. Any person with the ability for self-reflection realizes that no one knows what to do, and the disciplines and the perspective of Western civilization derived from the Enlightenment are not working. No theory, no discipline, no expert has an answer. A few scholars, thinkers, critics and writers have taken on the discovery of what went wrong and formed a movement responsible for the postmodern deconstruction of knowledge. They have discovered that our ways of being, our ways of doing, have blatantly failed us. These scholars have left in their wake not only the deconstruction of knowledge but the destruction of confidence in ourselves. We are looking for someone to help us, to save us. We are looking for someone that will tell us what we need to do. No expert, no answers to these questions have been found. The world and Western civilization in particular are now extremely vulnerable to codependencies based on power, control, manipulation and domination. These thinkers did not come up with any proposals to rectify this gap in knowledge. In the search for solutions, the search for answers, the dialectic has again presented itself as a process to fill the void. Those desperate for answers are easily manipulated by individuals to understand and control the ideologic dialectic method. The world is in danger. The dialectic has a long history stretching back, of course, to the ancient Greeks. In more recent times, Hegel and Marx have added their take on what a dialectic is. But in postmodern times it has taken on a life of its own that has little resemblance to its origins. The dialectic has been transformed by individuals seeking to gain control and authority for their own ends. The dialectic starts usually with an instigator, or, to be kind, for lack of a better term, a player. This instigator or player has an ideology that may or may not have competition to an end goal, which is the imposition of power. Sometimes it is in the instigator's best interest to create a competitor even if there is none. In any case, the player determines, labels and identifies an opposition which is constituted as the other. The other is differentiated from the player in being less than the player and in many cases downright evil to the ideology that the player wishes to promote. All kinds of negatives are directed at this other. In the course of starting a dialectic, the other has little choice and is forced to become a player as well and must defend against the dialectic attack. What ensues is an enabling codependency behavior cycle, in which each player out of necessity must attack and counterattack the negative misfortunes that are railed upon each of them by the other. This is a tit-for-tat exercise that usually absorbs a tremendous amount of time and energy and prevents those involved from seeing anything other than a continuation of the same. There is usually a lot of drama, a lot of story, a lot of narrative, a lot of emotion and very little reliance on fact. Hegel insisted that the combat of ideas presented in the dialectic would lead to some sort of thesis, antithesis and finally a synthesis. This of course never happens and is pure mythology. Hegel's mastermind, the omnipotent judge determining a synthesis, is nowhere to be found, or at least has escaped the planet. The players can come from anywhere. They can represent as ideology, a theology, a particular school of science, a theory or a paradigm or so much more. A deeper dive into the player's core knowledge reveals a worldview that is consistent with an ideology. Ready for combat, the player knows what to do, knows how to win, will consider no other alternatives and is extremely exclusive. The player relies on precognitive templates, has a very narrow range of perception, looks for the ability to extract only the knowledge that fits the ideology, engages in distortion, exaggeration and propaganda. The player controls the development of all the ideas within the ideology and prevents them from connecting up with other ideas that may transcend the dialectic. The other player has to react in kind and dig deep to find all of those elements to counteract the onslaught by the original player. The thinkers involved in the postmodern movement have detailed the dialectic of the Enlightenment. Here the dialectic is used as a loose framework to delineate the intrusion of Western ideology worldview upon the ecological indigenous world. The Enlightenment has come to mean a Western ideology, embodied in individualistic, multinational capitalism. It is entailed with white superiority, white privilege, and white male supremacy. It projects power, authority and intimidation upon the ecological indigenous world. The ecological indigenous world is identified with people of color who then experience guilt, victimization and disempowerment. The combination of objectified enlightenment, capitalism and science yields an intrusive science of objectification that attempts to turn the entire world into a marketplace where financial measurement is the only indicator of success. Recognition of what is not known and what is unknowable is also beyond the comprehension of Western ideology. As the West continues to penetrate the ecological indigenous world, every attempt is made to completely objectivify resources, information and products, to be captured, commodified for wealth extraction, resulting in profit production. Any thinking human being will come to the conclusion that the world has reached a breaking point. The intrusion of measurements into the world of intangibles is a recipe for disaster. It is in the unmeasurable and intangibles where the salvation of the world exists. Every attempt must be made to enhance our understanding of these. The evidence is clear that the dialectic is not working. Meanwhile, the climate crisis continues to grow and the planetary emergency due to its lack of ability to make decisions continues to fester. New ways of developing knowledge with an indigenous awareness must be allowed to develop and develop quickly. The combat between ideas must be replaced by the blending of ideas. Measurements must be subservient to the unknown and the not knowable. Humankind must be challenged at every attempt to create knowledge, and that knowledge and technology are ultimately incomplete and may not work as planned. Broad-based, participatory, diverse, continuous, transparent, dynamic interactive, mediated, anticipatory decision-making is required for comprehensive consensus action. All participants affected by new knowledge or technology must take part in any proposed innovation.